All right, thank you. This is a talk that I gave recently at a medical physics conference in Colorado called the Winter Institute of Medical Physics, or WIMP for short. If you have never been to that conference, definitely go. It's awesome. It was at a ski slope, and you literally walked out of the conference onto the chairlift. And there was a session at 7 to 8 a.m. and 5 to 6 p.m., and then the rest of the day was for skiing. Very cool conference. Definitely recommend you get along. So, who am I? These are my exact slides from that conference, so apologies for not being a medical physicist. It was more relevant there. They were all medical physicists, and then there was me, the lowly engineer. But I do have a PhD in MRI LINAC hardware design, working on the Australian MR LINAC project. And as mentioned, I'm the founder of Maxwell Plus, a startup here in Brisbane, Australia, working on applying artificial intelligence to prostate cancer care, right now from sort of day one to diagnosis, but really trying to explore what that looks like in a diagnosis to treatment workflow as well. And not relevant to this room, but to the Americans, it was important to say that I was also American. So that's me. And yeah, the topic of this talk is is AI ready for end-to-end care? And I guess the thing to start with on that is, what is end-to-end care, and why would AI even be considered there in the first place? So my definition of end-to-end care is having a consistent pathway, data collation and data analysis from the day a patient walks through the door to the day that they end up in treatment. And as people here who work in the hospital know, and we'll pretend that it's all other hospitals, not this one, often the way that information moves between patients, especially in multi-center institutions, is using the patient as a hub for information, maybe with some light referral and some printed out pieces of paper. And if we were to imagine using things like early blood tests and patient treatment histories in treatment planning, that becomes very, very difficult. So to do this well, we do need accurate information. And in prostate cancer and many other cancers, the difference between what is low risk and high risk cancer is not only determined by imaging information, but by a whole swathe of non-imaging data. And we need to collate that in one place. But analyzing and integrating all the data into one place, let alone storing it in the one place, is very resource intensive, and in a lot of cases isn't feasible on a patient-by-patient basis, just due to the time it takes to do all of that work. And this is where AI can come in. So starting with, in the area of prostate cancer, which is where we work, what does treatment look like today for patients? And if we look at prostate cancer, it is still treated as a whole organ disease. Despite prostate cancer starting out as a very focal disease and then growing, we have treatment options that are typically surgery, radical prostatectomy most of the time, and radiation therapy, irradiation of the whole prostate, sometimes combined with brachytherapy. And patients who have prostate cancer that needs treatment, knowing the risks of these and the side effects of these diseases, especially things like impotence and incontinence, are opting more and more to either defer treatment to a later date, or asking for more focal therapies. And we see no treatment, which is the category here, which in the paper that this is from is actually defined as active surveillance, is becoming a more and more important treatment option, growing about 30% over this time frame, which was, I think, a 4-year study, and in low-risk patients is growing 100% over that same time frame. So more patients are opting for alternative treatment options other than radical therapies. And this begs the question, if a patient has a small focal disease that can be happily left on active surveillance, do we just wait until it becomes a whole organ disease and then irradiate them completely then? And I think that's probably not anybody's ideal outcome. And within radiation therapy and many other areas, focal therapy has been talked about a lot. Now this one up here is a paper all the way back in 2009 which is, I suppose, about a lifetime ago then, which is stating that focal therapy was a new paradigm for prostate cancer treatment. But you'll notice in my slide before, which was the period from 2010 to 2015, focal therapies didn't even make the cut of available treatment options. And perhaps more relevant to the radiation therapists in the room, ideas like dose painting and adjusting radiation beam based on where prostate cancer is in the organ is becoming more and more interesting and more talked about. And that's a more recent study. It was in the last couple of years around using dose painting to, even in this case, just do left-right treatment of the prostate using different doses and the feasibility. And the outcomes of that was that it is feasible with the right data and the right treatment planning. But to make any of this possible, to really do focal therapy in prostate cancer or anywhere else, there are some conditions. It's only really an option when cases are diagnosed early. If cancer has spread across the whole organ, focal therapy doesn't make sense anymore. In many cancers, but prostate specifically, margins on tumors have been historically very difficult to determine, which makes treatment often very conservative in its margins, and we tend to go for radical therapies as a way to say, look, we're not going to take any risk. And as we know, and I guess Jason's study pointed out, inter-observer variability in even things like contouring is very real. And the industry knows its inter-observer variability rates, and for prostate that can be quite high. And that means, again, we need to play it safe. And as I'm sure the pressures are being felt here, increasing volumes in things like radiation therapy mean less time for planning or growing wait lists. And both things are being battled against. And that means that if we were to say not only do your basic contouring of the prostate, but do very focal contouring and develop more complex plans, we're very quickly going to run out of time to be able to do that sort of therapy. So we need some sort of technological answer to these problems. And if you haven't guessed already, my feeling for what that technological answer should be is artificial intelligence. And I'm sure everybody here has had some exposure to artificial intelligence. Most of the conferences, RSNA, AAPM, across the board are talking more and more about artificial intelligence and how it can help everything from diagnosis through to treatment planning. One of the hot topics at WIMP this year was automatic contouring using AI. Not the most exciting application of AI, I will admit, but it was at the forefront of discussion from not only the research teams there, but the vendors as well. And it's becoming more and more important. And the thesis that we have is that if AI is good at things in isolation, like segmentation of the prostate, detection and classification of lesions, and using a whole swathe of patient data, not only imaging, but more rich patient data to make these decisions, our thesis is that together we should be able to provide some form of end-to-end analysis for patients. But I have it up there. To date, really a lot of this has only been shown to work well in isolation. There's been very little work done on using AI across the patient journey from start to finish and what benefits can be seen there, but I am sure it's coming. So, end-to-end care, meaning from day one to a treatment, requires multiple specialties. Patients don't start their life in the radiation therapy department. They start their life perhaps at a GP or at a urologist in this case and move through that pathway. Knowing that patient care is a complex and multifaceted journey, single AI models in one person's clinical rooms doing really well is not going to be effective at scale. Any patient coming through might get through, say, radiology a little bit faster, but that's ultimately not going to change the clinical outcomes for things like prostate cancer across the board. Another part of this, which is certainly worth pointing out, is that complex diagnostic and treatment pathways are dynamic. Not every patient is the same. and they are multidisciplinary, especially when you have comorbidities and other factors at play. And another hot topic in AI at the moment is contextualization of artificial intelligence. We work with a lot of doctors, and I know that none of them are comfortable to just turn on a machine and let it decide, radiation therapy plans for their patients without any understanding of how it came to that decision. So a big part of the work we do and that the industry is doing is working out how to communicate outputs from artificial intelligence the same way that two clinicians, say, from differing specialties would communicate between each other. They don't require expert knowledge of each other's fields, but they do require a common language and a way to communicate that information. And I believe that is going to be just as important, if not more important, than the accuracy of these AI models going forward, is the trust that we can put in them. So overall, is AI ready for end-to-end care? There is a lovely, I don't know what it'd be called, theorem. I think it's Butterworth's theorem that if you ever see a talk or a newspaper article that is a question, you can automatically summarize that talk or newspaper article with a single word, which is no. But I'll go a little bit beyond that here, which is no but. So I don't think AI is ready. We haven't seen any good examples of end-to-end care, but I think the pieces are there. I think that AI is fast becoming a critical part of patients' lives and patient care, and we will see it appear in more and more places along the patient journey. And I genuinely believe, with innovations like MR-Linac that are becoming more and more automated, it makes sense to me to feed into those machines the outputs of automated diagnosis from a step before and really start to bring these technologies end-to-end in the patient flow. So that is all from me. That was the talk I gave. Hopefully there was some interesting information in there. If you ever want to reach out, that is my email, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about what we're doing or what else is going on. But thank you.